movies for IndieWire, and it is my great pleasure, hey guys, to introduce the filmmakers behind one battle after another, starting with casting director Cassandra KULUKUNDIS, cinematographer Michael, editor JURGENSEN, production sound mixer GARCIA, recording mixer and supervising sound editor SCARABOSIO, and special effects makeup artist ARJEN. Cassandra, I'll start with you. You've obviously been working with Paul Thomas Anderson going back, I think, to Boogie Nights at this point, which, let's just say, is the greatest cast movie ever. So, a good, great movie to have worked on. But I'm curious, so for you and him, where do you get started? What are the initial conversations like when you get started on a movie like this?
Well, it's different every movie, but this time, he sent this beast of a script that was what it was. So I really just tried to break down and try to figure out, okay, who's going to be what. Because he didn't actually tell me anything. Nothing is said at all. So you kind of have this, you don't want to be wrong at the same time. It's weird because I feel like he has to have certain people in mind when he hands it to me. But then luckily it just kept changing and going and changing. So by the time we knew we were going this time around, Leo was attached. So that was like, okay. Before that, it was like, who are any of these people? So Leo, that makes it a really good point to figure out things. And then I start saying, oh, is this person or that thing? But I do a lot of research on my own. So I'm prepared for whatever might come. So I have the list of I think the usual suspects, the obvious people, and then Alex, the box people, and then if we're doing people that aren't actors, and then street people, and then I have to be prepared for all of them because he changes his mind, and sometimes we read all 3 or 4 or 5 and then make a decision. So it's there's no way to prepare for it. You just have to be ready for everything and anything.
Well, I feel like obviously one of the great casting coups in this movie is Chase Infinity, who is incredible. So great discovery. I mean, the only thing I've seen her in before I watched this was Presumed Innocent. So.
She didn't exist when I first saw her.
Okay, so then even more of the kind of roll of the dice. How did you land on her? How challenging was it casting that role? Because it's the linchpin of the whole movie, and she's got to be able to hold her own against DiCaprio and everything else.
Yeah, no, I read thousands of roles. I've been doing it for years and years and years, and so everyone who knew me or I've ever met, I basically would tell them what I'm looking for, or see a kid on the street. I kid you not, from anyone from any kind of sports, martial arts. People, schools, I've gone to so many productions of I don't even know what, and I'm just looking, and being like, who's that? Who's that? The audience everywhere. And so people would send me tapes of their kids in school, friends that they knew, and I got sent a tape of her dancing, well, a bunch of girls dancing, and I just zeroed in, who's that? And it just went from there. Tracked her down, it turns out, also a real dear friend of mine picked her up as a manager, and we just did this. We just worked very carefully, step by step, presenting her to Paul, tapes and whatnot, and just got her trained and went through the process. But it was a lot. It was a lot. There's so many great people that I saw too, but it just was this or that or the other. It was tough. Chase was a lightning in a bottle, really.
And Michael, in terms of your initial conversations with Paul, when did the idea of VistaVision come up? And how did you guys arrive on that? And how did that kind of inform all of your other choices in terms of the visual language of the movie?
Yeah, Paul had been talking about Vista for a while. We actually did, we tested it even back on the master back then. And so it had always kind of been in his creative space. And he's like, look, I really want to shoot this on Vista. And it was really more about figuring out, can this camera hold up to what we were going to put it through. And so it was a lot of tests just to see how could we take this camera, which is really designed to sit on a tripod and do beautiful landscapes, and use it for handheld and steady cam and strap it to cars and all this kind of stuff. And so that was a bit of the journey to see if the camera could even be reliable enough. And so that really, by doing a series of tests, we were able to see, okay, this is actually what we can get away with, and this is gonna, we'll be able to use this reliably for the movie. And even then, we were still kind of we got into production, there was still a lot of little kinks and things that we were working out because it was just, the system hadn't really been worked in this fashion. And so, yeah, the Serge, the first AC, and the whole team was a lot of stressors over there with just trying to get it in frantic calls to Panavision. But yeah, so that was kind of how it all started from there.
Well, where did you even get the cameras, and what kind of shape were they in? I mean, I would think there's, I know this vision, I guess, some people still use it for effects photography and stuff, but for something like this, for the demands that you're talking about, how did you get the cameras in kind of working condition?
Yeah, and there was a place in the valley called Geo Film Group. They had 2 of them in, questionable condition because they didn't really work that much. And then, fortunately, the Giovanni Ribisi had one that was actually in like beautiful condition. And he was generous enough to basically give us the pristine car and take it out for a spin. And so that was really our A camera, our most reliable one. And then Panavision and a few other folks were able to modify and just kind of get up to speed the other 2. So that's kind of how it all came together.
And now, Andy, how does VistaVision affect your job and the workflow? I mean, does it change drastically what you're doing in post?
Not really in the Avid, not really when I'm cutting it together, but one thing that we did do is we did film dailies during the shoot, and we actually brought a VistaVision projector with us. We sent film all the way down to photochem, or negative, and then we made prints, and then sent it back up, and I actually traveled with the production, and kind of would have these screenings each night with Mike and Cassandra and everybody, and the crew and cast and Paul, and we just, watch the footage, and I would take notes, and so I had a good kind of roadmap for the takes to use as we were shooting, and often Paul will decide that we want to reshoot something or shoot it a different way. So it's expensive, I know, but it's so important to his process.
Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to say, that with Paul, is that you are always watching film dailies. So, which is really unique in kind of the modern workflow now. And so to be able to look at our footage every night as a team and look at, just see it projected on film was huge as far as just kind of shaping a movie.
And we actually watched it at this aspect ratio during dailies, and that kind of gave us the idea to, when Paul decided, okay, let's really try and have these special VistaVision screenings, let's do it in this aspect ratio. Whereas if you're just watching it digitally or in 70, it's 1:5. So you got more real estate in this.
Well, and how did you guys decide on this as the ideal aspect ratio? And how does the fact that it's, as you're saying, being released in a couple different aspect ratios, how do you wrap your head around that?
Well, yeah. In the Avid, it was, we never had it in this full aspect ratio, just because you want to see the performances as big as possible. So what we did, once we had a pretty decent cut, we sent it to the DI and had them conform it, and then exported a video in this size so that we could kind of check the frame lines and stuff. And honestly, I just the poor man's version of IMAX is we have a projector at the place where Paul and I cut, and I would just sit really close to the screen and just kind of get the feeling of what it would be like in IMAX. Because it's especially with the car stuff and the shaky camera and stuff, you kind of got to feel whether you're on the verge of motion sickness a little bit. So you kind of had to just test it out that way. So we didn't really watch it in IMAX until we did those we did a few tests. Remember?
Yeah, we did. We did some original in our testing process, which is with Paul. It's always very thorough because we're testing film stocks and process, but then also actors and costumes and just everything kind of comes in. But we had done a cut where we checked Vista cut with Super 35, and just to see and then that projected at IMAX and apply it, just see what it looked like.
That was kind of proof of concept.
Yeah.
And then we just finished the movie and then, did the full IMAX, all the IMAX prints and this.
Now, Jose, I read something, and I don't know if this is true, and if it is, I'm extremely impressed, but I read that there's no ADR on this movie. And so I'm curious, and we're talking here about shooting in VistaVision, which I've never been around a VistaVision camera, but I'm assuming they're noisy. So what are some of how did you get such clean sound of the dialogue under those conditions?
Well, I mean, it's like a lawnmower, basically. Mostly, I think it was thanks to the wiring that I had a great team, actually. Rachel Schroeder did the wiring, and Dave Thompson did the booming, but basically it was also thinking about how to mask that noise. And in some instances, like wiring the car engines and the car's exhaust to, try to help a little. I'm sure they did some cleanup with, the tools that we have nowadays in our disposition, but still, it needed, some more help. And I think all those tracks that we in addition to the performance tracks, really helped the movie in that way and mask a little the camera. Nice.
We also did, this is I think a trick from Chris Nolan. Sometimes we do just like a sound take after the takes were finished, right? You just do like an audio only take. So then sometimes we could use that audio and just like put it in their mouth, and it would sometimes work. We'd have to like fudge it a little bit, but then at least we could get the sound of what it's supposed to sound like without the camera, and then Chris could match it or whatever. So that's like one of the tricks that you can do is just record audio only.
We did have a blimp, which is a giant box that the camera
For 2
goes
takes.
into. Yeah, exactly.
No, for 2 reloads. And the second reload, it got stuck.
Yeah.
The blink went down.
It was an experiment. It didn't work so well. Yeah, it like tripled the size of the camera. That was the other problem.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, the scale of this movie is so immense, and there's so many sequences. Like I'm thinking about like the big, protest riot sequence. Like how do you approach something like that? I mean, that just seems like it would be an overwhelming task.
Mics everywhere, I mean, basically.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, again, the thing about this movie that's great is you've got stuff. It's got this huge epic scale, but then it's also very intimate, and this balance between the intimacy and the epic. Chris, I'm curious about how that informs your approach to the sound design. Because I just feel like, again, there's so many. This movie runs the full gamut of scale in terms of imagery, in terms of sound, in terms of all of it.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is we want to take the audience on a ride, and it starts with a kind of a big bang. So much happens immediately. We meet all these characters. We're not sure what's going on. Some really interesting things happen early on, and so creating the dynamics of each space is really the challenge. Is like in the opening scene where they're coming through the camp, Paul's saying like, okay, this is the belly of the beast here. This is where it should be really loud. The semis are coming by. There's people. There's all kinds of stuff happening here. And then when we cut to Lockjaw and Perfidia, we wanted to keep some activity, but also make that really intimate, because this is the first, this is kind of the basis of the whole story. And then the whole movie just kind of keeps taking you on this roller coaster ride. And so, we're just kind of following along to a certain degree, but trying to make sure that each area, each situation gets handled kind of to the most intense it can be, whether it's quiet or whether it's super loud and noisy and surrounding, like at the riot scene. Paul almost never lets me put stuff into the surrounds, and we went pretty aggressively on that. And at first he was like, but it puts the audience in the scene. And I think it's been fun on this one with Paul because he really wanted to make it expansive, and he kept saying like, make the screen as wide as possible. Let's really let's bring everything we can to this. So.
Yeah, it's funny to me that you say that Paul doesn't usually like the surrounds, because I feel like this movie, I've seen this movie now, this is actually, I think it was my 7th time seeing it, and every time I see it, something like that riot scene, I get so on edge, and I'm trying to figure out why I'm still getting on edge when I've seen the movie so many times. And I realized tonight it was because of the sound behind me. Like I felt like there was somebody who was gonna like sneak up behind me or something. I mean, it's really effective. So it's funny to me that he is, you know, why does he generally not like the surrounds?
I think, you know, each movie has its own needs and wants. Like, I started with him on Punch Drunk Love, and every time something would go in the surrounds, he'd be like, no, we're not doing that. And then we actually spent like 3 days making it a mono movie, like not even left and right, just pure center, like kind of like in his mind, he was making kind of an old-timey movie. And, you know, we did that, and he said, well, that's not really working either. So, you know, you kind of find where he's in the comfort zone of each movie. And on this one, kind of straight away, it was like, we're gonna go big, right? And he's like, I think we need to go big. I'm like, all right, good. So, yeah, it's been fun.
Well, Arjen, I've got to say, like, one of my favorite moments in this movie is the cut where we see the reveal towards the end of the film, when we see what Lockjaw looks like after everything he's been through. It's such an incredible special effects makeup design. And I was wondering if you could talk about, like, just both conceptually and then how you actually executed it. Like, what were the stages towards figuring out that look?
I was on another film and they reached out, Paul. I had a meeting with Paul and Sean, and Paul had sent me some like little art pieces that he's gathered of just visuals that he thought was interesting. And he told me, I hadn't read the script, he told me what he would like to see. And Sean had some ideas, and I incorporated that and put it all into like a concept. And he liked it, but a concept is one thing than an actual makeup, because the one thing he did ask me is like, please, this is the climax of the film, it needs to look real, it needs to be, you know, it's the moment. So, like, I got it. So, you know, I sculpted this sculpture on Sean's face. I made a dental piece. It's actually a two-part piece. We had a contact lens. We had a bunch of prosthetics over his brows. He had a half a brow, and all that stuff is like individually punched in one by one. And then we had a silicone prosthetic on his cheek that actually was cast in different densities, just because if he was talking, I couldn't have that look too rubbery or too artificial. It needed to be look literally like a skin graft, but that section was kind of stuck in his face. And we did the first camera test, makeup test, and Paul had some adjustments, I had some adjustments, which is normal. I went back to my lab and I actually resculpted the whole thing, rebuilt it, and then we started shooting. So yeah.
And what kind of collaboration do you have with some of the other department heads? Like, for example, Michael, are you guys working together to make sure this stuff is going to look the way you want it to look on camera?
Well, Michael just made me look good. I mean, I remember the first camera test we did with it. It was just kind of like seeing kind of how the light behaves on it and all that. And then, like you said, you went back and you put a bunch of notes to it and stuff. And then when we actually were working with it, especially at the end there, when we did that close up where you know, when he's dying in the chair, and I was like, wow, yeah, this is, you know, the way we had it lit and everything, and we had the street outside, so we had to really bring a lot of light into the room to get the exposure right, so we could see the traffic on below there. And it was really, like, after all of our conversations and looking at stuff, it was really amazing what it ended up looking like.
Yeah, I mean, I thought, you know, look, as long as Paul's happy, then, you know. Because I remember that camera, the first test, and it was, what, 3 feet away? And I was like, I think it better look good.
Yeah, had it right in there, yeah.
Well, Cassandra, one of the things I love about all of your movies with Paul Thomas Anderson is there's always at least one, usually there's many actors who I've never seen before who come in and I'm just like, who the hell is that person? And sometimes I find out later that they aren't even actors. They're people you find who, you know, from just wherever. The one for this movie, the first time I saw it, that I was just like, who the hell is this guy? This guy is incredible. Is whoever the actor is who plays the interrogator, or I don't know what, you know, I mean, like, just both funny and terrifying and disturbing and great. Who is he and where did you find him?
Well, that's a really funny story because obviously that had to be a really important looming sort of character. And he was in a documentary and he was a real ICE agent. And I would show actors and be like, this is what we're looking for, and use him as an example, and I was trying to like stack the deck. And it just wasn't happening. And I say this with love to any actors out there. It's like they were actually scarier or more smooth, or just, it just felt like, here's the nemesis. And Jim is just like awkward in that kind of almost, this cop speak, it's not even English sometimes, and you're just like, wait, what? And they think they're funny, but it's not funny, and it's just like, and you can't teach, I'm trying to teach actors that, and I'm trying to show them, and they're just like, okay, but then they make it actory, but like in a good way, like it's really, and that works in some movie, but in this movie that was not gonna work. And we have Lockjaw doing Lockjaw things, so you have to have everyone else around them be real. So we decided that has to be all military. So Jim and everybody else were real. But he is now an actor, he has an agent, he is ready.
Yeah, I mean, he's so good. I wondered while I was watching, I was like, is he making, is some of this dialogue coming from him, or is it, I mean...
Oh, it is, yeah. It's like, you know, because Paul's a big fanatic of like, how would you say this? What would you do? And, you know, like even the cop that pulls Benicio over with his small beers, she was so cocky, and she was like right at him. He was like, he didn't even know he said it. He was kind of like, and she's so tiny, but she's like packed a little punch. Like that helps. It puts the actors in a flashback too, like when I was interrogated or when I was pulled over one time. You know, we've all, well, some of us have been. and you know, you have that reaction. And Jim, like when he turns to Somerville and he's like, oh, you're in a container covered in plastic. He's like, you making jokes? Right. It's chilling because of, you know, a fabulous, you know, seasoned actor would do it like all, you know, and he just was like, I'm gonna kill you. Like, you're dying, you know that, right? Like, it's like, oh, it's so awkward.
Yeah, no, he's incredible. I mean, now, for some of the parts, obviously, you know, a lot of these actors, you know what they, you know, Sean Penn, you know what they can do, but like for the supporting roles or the smaller roles, where you're bringing people into audition, you know, there are a lot of actors, I think, that, you know, can be great auditioners and not necessarily great on set, and vice versa. How do you create the circumstances or the environment when you're auditioning to sort of know what you've got?
I mean, I'm off the book. I'm with you the whole time. I'm acting with you. I'm following you. If we have to do something, we do it. No one goes on that movie screen that I haven't met and worked with. No, there's no, even if you send a great tape, if I'm doing tape stuff, I'm still coming over to your house. Exactly. So I just, you know, that's how I really have to be there. I have to look in your eyes and know that you're going to follow me. I'm going to make stuff up. I'm going to go off the page. I have to know that you're ready, because it's not just learning lines and saying them. We change things all the time. Like everyone here can tell you, we show up to set and say, we're not going to do this anymore, and this is no longer that. So I need people who can roll with these punches. And the real people don't know. Like, you know, they don't get it, you know, actors are like, oh, you're taking my dialogue away. Like, real people are like, what do I do? Okay. And then the actors, I need them to know, like, yeah, you're dropping it. You might have been the good guy yesterday, now you're the bad guy. Like, and you just have to be ready. So I need range all the time.
Well, the performances in this movie across the board are fantastic. And so I'm kind of curious to hear from everybody how you see your role in terms of either helping create an environment that's you know, facilitates the best work from the actors, or just how you see your role in kind of showcasing their performance. Like, for example, Michael, do you think about the environment you want to create on set for the actors, or do you think, it's Paul's job?
Well, I mean, I think on this movie, what was interesting is like, because this was my 5th one working with him, and it was really, there was an element of, you know, to what Cassandra just said, is that there were so many, I guess I'd say, non-actors that were functioning the roles. It was really important to like more of an environment and then see where we pick out our moments. And so, you know, there's so many little things that were happening in the movie that were, there's a larger improv element to the film that a lot of these, you know, like, it's Bluto, right, who's at the door, you know, and the kid comes to the door and he's like, what, you know, and even that line that he had when he's getting interrogated, and he's like, hey, yeah.
I look like your father?
Yeah.
Hey, Doug.
Hi, Doug. And it's like those great little moments were just happening. You had to, I think if you have a bunch of like movie lights blasting on people, that automatically sets a thing, and people are like, oh, you know, and we were really trying to find an aesthetic that works, that also gives everyone the freedom to move around. Because like at the scene, for example, like, and it wasn't just like lighting too, it's also just like, I mean, you know, the set that Flo and Anthony, the set decorator, created. And there's so many little moments, like the parent-teacher conference, which that woman was the drama teacher at the school, right?
She was a drama, she was the English, but she wants to be an actress.
Oh, that was it. Okay, yeah. So, I mean, you know, and it starts out with that whole thing where he's looking at the presidents, and that was just like having an environment that had these images of the presidents in the wall, and he just starts riffing on it a little bit, and it turned into that whole thing, you know. And I got the slave owner, you know, and all that. And it's just like, so you had to create an environment where you could just have catch those moments when they came. And there were so many of them that just added the texture of the whole thing.
Well, Jose, a similar question for you. How do you see your role in terms of helping create an environment that's going to facilitate the actor's best work?
Well, I mean, it's a very fluid set. I mean, because it's, you know, so basically it's being able to pivot 180 if need be. I mean, like, it's all movie people here, and you see in the call sheet an 8 of a page, and you say, that's easy.
Don't fall for it.
We ended up calling it Death by an 8. We had, you know, 4 people wired a plant there and 2 booms over there, and it was like, you know, it was just rolling with the flow of, because, like you say, it's a grandiose film in a very constricted and intimate spaces. So you just have to, you know, be nimble and, you know, help the flow.
Well, and Arjen, how about you? And you know, when you're working with somebody like Sean Penn, again, what are you thinking of in terms of your responsibility for the performance and the actor, and kind of helping create the circumstances in which he's going to be able to do what he needs to do?
Yeah, well, especially as a makeup artist, because you're so personal with them every day. You're in their personal space constantly, but also it has to look good. On top of that, of course, this is the climax of the film. But that's with all the crafts here, really. I mean, if it just doesn't work, the movie can be that great, but if the makeup would have looked bad, for example, even at the climax and fake, you would have kind of been thrown out of the film. When it comes to Sean, he was very, I mean, he's kind of method, so he would play in the mirror with the pieces and ask you, oh, can we push that a little further, or, you know. So, you know, you do the best you can, and in the end, it's there to propel the story, right? So.
Well, and yeah, Andy, something I wanted to ask you about in terms of performance. I mean, again, every scene in this movie has something great performance-wise, but one of my favorite scenes is the one with Sean Penn and Willa, where they're waiting for the DNA test, and it's like the rhythms of that scene are so perfect, but it feels like the kind of thing that there must have been a lot of trial and error, because it, you know, 30 seconds either way in the scene, it can fall apart.
Yeah, there was a lot more shot for that scene, that sequence, I guess I should say. So we actually did a lot of experimenting, kind of sometimes moving some lines around, kind of changing like the order of the lines. And we actually didn't have the cutaway to Danvers and Deandra. We for a long time, we did not have that. And we did not cross-cut back and forth. It was kind of just staying in the DNA test like the whole time. And it was also quiet too, like there was no music for the longest time. It was just, because, you know, you're kind of building up to the two of them meeting. So it was like, we made a big meal out of that scene. But as we were screening it and just kind of working through it, we were like, it would actually be interesting to kind of cut back and forth between two people kind of getting interrogated in a way. And it just helps with the passage of time too. In fact, there was a line in the sequence where Sean starts the test, and he's like, it's gonna take 30 minutes for the information to be revealed, whether you know, the results of the DNA test. So we decided we had to cut that out, and in order to just show passage of time, we cut to the Deandra and Danvers scene. And then adding the music, Johnny's music there, which is kind of like a ticking clock you know, it has this kind of military feel to it, just adds to the tension. So, yeah, that went through like a lot of versions.
Yeah, well, it's interesting you bring up the music because, Chris, I wanted to ask you about the sound for scenes like that, because I think people, when they think of sound, they think of stuff like, you know, the car chases or something like that, but it's like, you know, in a way, to me, the sound design in some of the quieter moments in this movie is where it's really effective, and again, you're doing so much with sound here to kind of showcase what the actors are doing and kind of direct our attention.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, this movie is so real. So the fact that there are these amazing actors and then these people who aren't actors, to maintain the realism of all of that, you know, I make a lot of choices. There's any number of ways to kind of make the soundtrack for a film, and you know, one way is to do it very polished, and another way, and I know working with Paul, is to make it as gritty and as real as possible. So anytime that we can kind of bring hyper realism or realism to a scene, that's kind of what we're going for. So yeah, you know, so there's the kind of sound design aspect of that, and then there's the dialogue side of it, preserving all the performances, making sure that, you know, like if we don't have to use ADR, which is always the goal, to go find, you know, we database all the production audio so that we can, you know, we have all the takes available and listen, you know, if we need to grab a word from a different take, you know, that we can clear up a line, and, you know, so all of that is just to preserve all the performances and to make it as real as possible.
Well, and then how do you approach something like that first car chase after the bank robbery that goes wrong? Like, you talk about feeling real. Like, again, I'm not exactly sure what you're even doing there, but it feels like you know, it sounds like you're in a real car. Like, it sounds like it's really, really visceral and realistic. Talk a little bit about crafting that sequence.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we're not dealing with F1 cars. You know, these are not high performance cars. These are junky, you know, there's like a Ford Taurus and a Chevy van, you know, so you want to create the excitement, and these cars don't have impressive sounding motors, but, you know, when you rev any car out, you know, it kind of hits that point where it just feels like it's doing everything it can. And there's kind of a hopelessness to that chase. It's like, you know, they're screwed. And so finding, you know, the right sounds to give that feeling of we're doing everything what we can to get out of here, but we're not getting out of here. And just, you know, and then just trying to make it as intense and kind of dynamic. And when the crash happens, the way it's cut, it really, you know, it kind of helps a lot because you're not expecting it. And then, you know, we really kind of leaned into every kind of crunch and hit and rattle, seatbelt hit, and just to feel like you're in there with them. So just always trying to amp up that realism and kind of deal with what we have. You know, like if I put like a high performance motor in one of those cars, it would be a different chase. It might work, but it wouldn't be that. And that's really what we're going for.
Well, and how did that intention to make it realistic and immediate affect the way you guys approach that sequence, Michael and Andy, in terms of the shooting and the editing?
I mean, it was definitely like, you know, to what you're saying about like how Paul sometimes, you know, has different things with sound. It was the same with this because he really wanted to, you know, just originally just strap the cameras onto the car, and then we started messing around with, you know, using some of the Pedal Pursuit cars and things like that, where we could really strap on and drive around, and with the team that came with that, it was like, wow, it really opened the door for like how we can really up the visual wow. And because those guys were like, yeah, let's just haul ass through here and jump over this, and you know, and so those were really it just kind of added that extra thing to it, and then also just keeping the energy of it, like you know, the cameras could bounce around, they could do things like that, and so it was really all about like those little, just having those imperfections in there. Yeah.
He had mentioned French Connection as kind of the inspiration for that sequence, because there's also no music. It's just the sound of the cars. So yeah, we just tried to keep the energy up and, you know, use as much of the like crunching or the any like little sparks that we saw. Just keep it moving, keep it moving, keep it moving. And then also with the helicopter too. I remember that was something that for all those POV shots, like he wanted the helicopter sound so loud, and I think you put that like in all the speakers, right?
We went full Atmos on that one. Just the ceiling.
I was curious, Andy, you know, I love the moment in the movie when the one battle after another title comes up. But I'm curious, was that always where it was going to be, or did you guys experiment with moving it around?
We experimented with having it at the beginning of the movie, like I think even over when Perfidious, like on the overpass there too. The thing is that for the past few movies, he's done the title at the beginning, like over black, and then started the movie. So we kind of were like, you know what, we've already done it 2 or 3 times in a row. Let's do something different. So we just experimented with, this is kind of interesting because this is now like, this is this next chapter of the movie, and it's gonna kind of start everything into motion in a way. Yeah, it kind of really worked well on the back of Alana, and it kind of worked with the music too, I think, so it stuck.
Well, I feel like we're barely scratching the surface here, but I know I'm already going over my time I was given. You know, I'm not a critic, so I try not to play favorites, but I'm just going to say it. I think this is the best fucking movie of this century. So thank you for coming out and doing this, everybody, and thank you all for coming out.